go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another evening with a live chat. And tonight I have a very special guest who I happened to meet just a few years back at VidSummit 2017, and his name is Ross Brand. I see Ross Brand as a standout content creator. He's a thought leader and a pioneer in the realm of live streaming. And a lot of us are fascinated with live streaming and the potential of what we can do with it. And it's very exciting. And Ross is going to share a lot of his wisdom and experience from being a pioneer in the field tonight. And so I'd like to first let you all know that Ross has several shows out there. Not only is he a live streamer, but he's also a podcaster. And he has his Livestream Universe update show. He also has Brand on Broadcasting and Livestream Deals. So there's lots of shows. He's, active in several platforms, like, Facebook and the podcast areas, and he does YouTube posting and Instagram. And we're going to talk all about his endeavors in, the multitude of social media options that we have, because Ross is very, very active, I must say. He also has an Alexa flash briefing where he also provides a Livestream Universe update. So there's a lot of publishing going on with Ross, and it's very exciting to see. And Ross, welcome to the show.
Gord, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I remember a little over a year ago at VidSummit, we were talking about you and starting to live stream, and you asked me when you got it going if I would come on, and I said I would love to, and I was looking forward to you starting your show, and you're off to a great start. You've had some wonderful guests and great conversations, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, thanks, and I really appreciate you being a guest. And, just to share with everybody, when I was at VidSummit, I asked Ross, hey, Ross, I'd love to interview you one day. And I didn't, I'll call it for me, get the courage up to approach Ross, because I wanted to have a number of live stream interviews under my belt to get some experience so that I could feel good about how I would carry things through. So I'm really excited tonight that I finally went through, and Ross was very kind to accept my request to be on with us all here. And we've got a nice crowd starting here. Ross, welcome to Pam Duthie. We got Crypto Cruising and Video Zeus and Foulfish. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I just see there's Livestream Universe. I know who that is. That's Ross. So everybody, we're going to be covering a number of topics tonight, and I can't wait. I keep saying that, but first let's talk about the Ross's backstory a little bit, because I want people to understand that Ross, you were originally in HR, isn't that right? And then you got involved in broadcasting, in radio broadcasting. So can you sort of carry for us, explain to us all how you got into live streaming on your journey, and what is the mission of Livestream Universe, if you could summarize that at the end of that. Yeah.
So I started in radio, actually. After working for newspapers for a short amount of time, I decided that talking to people was a little more fun than writing. So I got into radio, and I did 12 years on air in radio, and then wanted a different kind of career, and I went into HR, and somewhere along the line, social media came on the scene, and I started doing a lot of social media stuff, and started connecting with a lot of people on social media through Twitter chats and Facebook and other platforms. And I had seen some talk about this platform called Blab, where there was these conversations going on, and I wasn't sure if it was like Chat Room 2.0 or what exactly. When people were saying, "Oh, there's a Twitter chat and there's going to be a show and we're going to talk about it on Blab or whatever," and I didn't really know what they were doing. But I opened it up one day and I felt like I had fallen into talk radio heaven. I mean, it was shows, people really were doing like radio style talk shows with webcams. And I just fell in love with the platform instantly. Within a few days, I started Livestream Universe, started a Twitter account, then I had about, I don't know, what did I have, about 800, 5 to 800 people or something sign up within a matter of, a week or so. And I said, okay,
wow,
there's interest around this. Now, it didn't continue growing like that, but there was a passionate group of people who were hungry for information and for news about what people were doing when they were doing their shows and things like that. So that was the first kind of iteration of Livestream Universe, was going to be to sort of be a media organization covering live streaming and promoting what other people were doing. I really didn't have any intention of hosting shows again or doing that kind of thing. And so after about a month, of course, I got the bug and started hosting shows. And since then, I think I've done a few videos and podcasts.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So doing Blab, that experience, that's what got you all inspired to do shows.
Yeah, I mean, I love Blab, and then I watching just wasn't enough, so I started becoming a guest on some shows and calling in and things like that. And then after doing that for a little while, I got the bug and wanted to do my own show, so I started a show called Livestream Stars, in which I interviewed live streamers, early adopters, about how they were using live streaming on behalf of their business or to entertain people or to build their personal brand or enhance their social outreach. And I went through, a lot of different people from different industries who were using live streaming.
So this was done on Facebook, or was it on Blab first?
It started on Blab, then it moved to a platform called Fire Talk, and then it moved finally to Facebook Live. I used platform, what did I use? I used Blue Jeans first for a little bit, and I started using Be Live, which is what I use for most of my interview talk shows, and then I also use Wirecast for other shows, but I'm sure we'll get into the gear and the software and stuff later on.
Sure. So yeah, I remember when Blab was kind of going down and everyone said like the end is coming, there were all of these other Fire Talk and a few other incarnations that were out there competing for the space and who's going to be the next big player. And wow, they went through a number of them, didn't they, before things like Facebook really stepped up to make the platform accessible for this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, once Facebook came along, we knew that Facebook was going to be big, and the question was it going to kill the other platforms? I don't think anybody predicted how dominant Facebook Live would be. I mean, I think everybody had a little trepidation about going to Facebook because we were having these conversations in places like Blab or Fire Talk that were sort of, you were doing the show for people who were really interested in it, right? And now you're going to Facebook Live and you're doing the show for whomever sees it in the news feed, who's ever opted into your business page, friends and family who you didn't even think about watching your show, and now they're watching. So there was a little trepidation around that, and the way that the viewership is on a platform like Facebook is very different. People would come to your show on Blab or on Fire Talk, and they might stay for 20 minutes, a half an hour. They might stay for 2 hours.
Right.
You might do a post show for an hour and just chat, and people would still be hanging in. Facebook Live changed things because there's a lot of competition for attention. And when you're on Facebook Live, people are coming in and out all the time. The watch time isn't as long. But the ability to reach a lot of people and have a lot of people get a taste of what you're doing becomes enticing. And it's hard to go, even though those 20 views or those 40 views or those 100 views were, people who were really sticking around for significant amounts of time. It's hard to turn down once you realize you can reach thousands of people on a platform like Facebook.
So how do you feel organic reach has been affected from when you started out then? Because I hear you talk about the amazing reach you can get in the feed and all kinds of people, and now, a lot of people talk about how organic reach is like all but done, but obviously video garners much more attention and in distribution through the feed, right?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook has made it very difficult to get good organic reach on a Facebook page, and good luck doing it on your personal profile either. What you have to do is you have to think about why else you're doing the show on Facebook Live. So if you're only doing it because you want the most live viewers at that time, Facebook is making that challenging. But if you're doing it with the idea that there are replay viewers, that there's repurposing, that there's, making a podcast out of it, that you're going to make several YouTube videos off of a show, that you're going to post clips in Instagram stories and in your Instagram account, that you're going to embed the show on your website, that if you have a show that you're particularly well aligned, that's particularly well aligned to your business, you might put some dollars behind it and boost that show. So if you're thinking beyond the live show, then you're not necessarily getting discouraged, because what used to be 1,000 people showing up may be 150 showing up, and what used to be 150 people showing up could be 25 or 45 people showing up. I mean, they've really made it hard to get that organic reach.
Yeah.
The thing is that live video still tends to do better than other forms of posts. Compare a live video post, the reach of that compared to a photo post or a text post. And because people are communicating in the chat, there's still that social interaction that Facebook's trying to foster. And Facebook considers that as, a productive conversation versus, the type of posts that really don't get a lot of engagement. And they're trying to do away with, rewarding people because they say put A, B, or C in the in the chat, and somebody puts that in, and then oh look, they got 10 responses. But they really want people having conversations in the chat amongst the different people in the chat, and that happens most, I think, during live streams. But it's a tough game. Facebook's becoming very much a pay-to-play platform.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. I wanted to ask about. Sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, you don't know what kind of reach you're going to get when, obviously in the profile page, it's not going to be much, but on a on a Facebook page or a group, you'll have, the likelihood of getting far greater reach, at least in the group, for the people that are there, the scope of the group. If it's large, then it's a bonus, right? And then on your Facebook page. So I guess there's, like you said, I'm calling it, there's an ecosystem that we're going to dive in a little more to talk about, relating to the different platforms and how, you've already alluded to how you can strategically use the content that you create. And I think that's how we should be starting to look at things, because it's much more than just about creating the content and it rest only in Facebook, because you have so much other opportunity now, right? So I'm going to dive into that, and a little later I wanted to take a closer look at that. But there is a question here. Just let Video Zeus know that we'll address that one a little later on. He was asking about the length of time for shows and that, so I think we'll get into that in depth a little later on. So I just wanted to put a
there's no easy answer to that question, but we can take it on in a little bit.
Yeah, so I apologize. I have a bit of a dry throat today, and I don't know where it came from, but it's something I'm struggling with. So how important is it for brands and small businesses or corporations to be using live streaming or podcasting to help in terms of, is it required now for competition and for brand awareness? Like, how do you position it when you talk to the different types of people that are looking or thinking about live streaming and podcasting?
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken a very balanced approach to it, and while I think it's an amazing tool and it can be extremely powerful and extremely helpful to a lot of businesses, it's not necessarily the right tool for everyone. Some people, they don't have the skill set for it. It's not something. I mean, I think most people can learn it, but for some people, it's just not the best way they can create content. There's other types of content that are a better fit for what they do. If your schedule is packed with clients and customers from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep and you don't have an opening, perhaps you don't need to be live streaming for customer acquisition, right?
Right.
You may just want to keep billing and keep that schedule full if it's already full. So you have to think about what your business needs are. But I can't think of a better way to connect with customers, to be helpful to customers, to answer questions, to humanize your business, to let people see a little bit behind the scenes and feel a part of your journey. There's so many positives that live streaming brings. Uh, Number one, it has advantages over other types of audio and video because of the live aspect, because of that connection that we're making right now with a live audience and the ability to answer people's questions on the spot. And they see how we approach those questions and how we handle things that might come up that aren't expected. So you get a more real look at the person. That doesn't mean that, it isn't a terrific art form to be able to produce a tremendously good podcast or a vlog or a tutorial video or anything else. All those are wonderful forms of medium, but it's the press release versus the taking questions from reporters spontaneously, right? And so live streaming's more like, hey, I'm here, ask me what you're going to ask me. Even if you had emailed me a list and said, these are the exact questions I'm going to ask you, right, and I know that I'm going to say something that's going to trigger you or somebody in the chat to ask a question, and I have no way of predicting in what direction this is going to go, what we're going to cover, what I'm going to say, because if I was reading off of notes or whatever, it would be obvious. And so right, that off the cuff, that unscripted nature of live streaming is extremely powerful because your customers, people who might work with you, people who are supporting you, people who are entertained and informed by what you do, just love seeing how you react in real time and how you deal with things in an unscripted manner. It's really amazing way to communicate in business that we really didn't have before, right?
Yeah, and also
live radio, people did live TV, but they were entertainers, they were news people, they were sports casters. This is actually business people can all have their own live show and break their own live news. It's not the produced video by a production company. It's not the infomercial, and it's not the press release that had 14 different edits and took a week to be prepared to time perfectly with the launch and all that. There is something organic about it that no matter how much somebody thinks they prepare for it, the live show never goes quite how you would have predicted, and that's what makes it unique and interesting and exciting. And I think if you can do that fairly well, and I think most people can pick up the skills and learn how to do that fairly well, it's a tremendous advantage versus businesses that are only communicating through old media.
Yeah, and those are great points. And I also think that the engagement factor of the people that show up and how they communicate amongst themselves too. And it's interesting, oftentimes what they bring forth in their own dialogue. So it's like another dimension of bringing the community together, not just alone for interaction with the host, right? But also amongst themselves. It's like another dimension, I find, which is really cool.
It feels difficult to go back to doing a show without a live chat. I mean, because no matter how well I know my guest, no matter how well I know my topic, there is always somebody in the chat that knows that subject matter better than I do, or knows my guest better than I do, or has a different take on things, or thinks of a question I never would have thought of. So the chat, the live chat, just makes the show better. It makes it better because people share anecdotes that you wouldn't have known about. They maybe trigger a subject that you might not have talked about. And just having that live conversation and being able to sense, is the chat kind of digging what we're talking about, or is the chat, does it seem like you can just kind of feel it, even if when you're not looking at the chat, you can kind of feel whether the audience is there with you, or whether it's time to move on to a different subject. And that's amazing. And that's something I didn't have when I worked in radio. I mean, you're in a room, you're by yourself, you're with a co-host, a producer, maybe you've got a guest on the phone, you've got somebody handing you some notes from time to time about something breaking, or about some sound that they want you to run in the middle of a report or something. But that's it. You don't know whether you have hundreds of thousands of people listening, or you have 10 people listening. You have no clue what they're thinking, whether they like it, what they want you to talk about, unless you take calls. And the people who call into shows are in general, when it comes to radio, very, very much not representative of the larger group of people who are listening, whereas the chat is super representative of the people who are watching a live stream show.
Yeah, that's so true. And I was thinking about how with radio, unless it's a talk show, like you said, you're not really able to engage with the people. So you're just putting something out. It's a more of a one-way dialogue for the most part, right? And so when you're doing a live experience like this with people participating, it's a whole other dimension of connection. Is this a reason why radio or broadcast shows, there's more and more of a movement towards doing live streaming and in platforms like this than there is, say in traditional radio show growth?
That's a tough question. One thing I can say for sure is it's a reason why, if somebody's good at broadcasting in radio or TV, it doesn't mean that they're going to be good at live streaming, because live streaming is 45% broadcasting, it's 45% social, and it's about 10% of knowing the tech specific to doing this. It's not a lot of tech, but you got to know a few basics to get the show live and troubleshoot and make sure you have the right gear and whatever. Not a lot. It's pretty easy, but it's got to be, there's a few things that go into it. But in essence, it's part social media and it's part live, it's part broadcasting. So if you only have the broadcasting skill set and you don't know social media in terms of how to promote it, how to respond, how to engage a live chat, if you're not comfortable with the tools and the platforms where we're broadcasting to, or you're just used to pushing things out to a passive audience, that isn't enough. Just as if you come from social media, you still have to learn some broadcasting skills in order to make a show or a program or an interview out of just talking, right? Yeah. How do you make what your subject matter is, what your business is, what the topic is? How do you make it interesting for people to consume when they're listening, when they're watching? And that takes some broadcasting skill.
So I always thought, Ross, that a broadcaster coming into this domain would have a leg up on everyone else. But, I've heard stories where some of them look at it and they consider it to be pretty daunting. Is it because of the fact that they may lack the social media experience and skills to engage, like you're saying?
I think they lack the social media skills. The tech is unfamiliar for the most part. If you're on air, you're not necessarily learning, a lot of digital skills. You may be today, you may be expected to, but when I was doing it 10, 11 years ago, when I got out of it, it was optional, right? Yeah. For me, there were people who decided to learn that and were on air, but there were other people like me who were on air who were still, doing the least that they needed to do in as far as digital editing and digital tech.
Right.
And then the gear and all that stuff, there's an engineering department that takes care of all that. I don't have to worry about most of my settings. All I have to worry about is if my mic is turned on and I know where the cough button is, and what is my level right or whatever for my little preamp that I have. But that's all I've got to really know. Maybe I work at a station where I need to run the board myself, and then it's still not knowing all the things to get it on the air. It's just knowing what I need to do for my piece of the puzzle. And so there's, I think, an intimidation on the tech side. I mean, because I've talked to radio people who want to live stream, and when you mention something like, well, Wirecast or OBS would be a good way to do it, it's like, what, who, how, where?
Yeah.
How do I get that into the phone, into the thing, into the, so there's that challenge. There's a challenge of I think we take for granted that for people who've never been active on social media, it's not only don't they have the built-in following, because if they're well known in their community or in nationally or whatever, they can get that within a short period of time. They can build up an account. It's sort of understanding the culture of the different platforms, and if you haven't been in social media at all, that may take some time to understand the different platforms.
Because I've always wanted to learn about the perspectives on being someone coming from broadcasting. I must say I want to welcome a bunch of extra people that have joined us, including Professor Nez, Car Galaxy Studios, Simply Beth, Top Shelf VA, and I want to share in Sarasota experience and your real estate whisper. Professor Nez has been providing his typical comedic contribution when there's Ross Brand in the room, and it's been quite entertaining. He's bringing a smile to my face, I'd say. So welcome, Professor Nez, and we know your trademark.
He's got a class in 10 minutes, huh?
Okay.
Class is canceled. This is a special edition of Gord's show. We need for the students. Let them learn all about it.
That's right. There we go. Live. There you go. And then he can share that banter with his students. That would be cool.
Say you've got two guest speakers here and you're going to turn it over to them and they're on video. And then take the night off.
Yeah, that would be funny. There you go. Ross brings it out of me. Yeah, you guys have a magic chemistry when it comes to the comedic element, I must say. It's exceptional. That clip when he saw you with all your gear set up at Vid Summit was just priceless. It was a lot of fun. So I wanted to ask you just one more follow-on question about the branding side of things. And that was, what do people expect? What should they expect for ROI, whether you're a personal brand or a corporate brand? Like, I think of things like YouTube, and it's a long game, and a lot of people come in thinking that my subs are going to race, my views are going to soar, and they're going to be running to my business all of a sudden, right? So people get to learn as they start to be content creators and producers and getting their stuff out there, that it's a bit of a longer game, and it's not just simple math to see results. What are your thoughts on that in terms of live streaming and podcasting, and would they differ, or is it similar?
You can obviously measure conversions from live streaming. You can ask people how they found out about you, how they got to your website. You can measure, you can give out a code for something or a link that's special to your live streams, and you can see how many people are signing up. You can certainly find out that from clients and customers, how'd you hear about me? Oh, I saw your live stream. But if you really want to get down to it, when you talk about personal branding, what's the ROI of your resume? Can you define that? Not that easy, right? Well, live streaming and social media is like your resume on steroids, because while your resume is black and white text on a piece of paper and sort of shuffles into a deck of 1,000 other resumes when you apply for a job, having a blog, having video content out there, having a digital footprint that includes audio, and that especially if it includes some type of live communication where people can tune in and actually see you live or see the video in replay, but know that it was done live. That's a very powerful and memorable way to make an impression when you're applying for a job, when you're, you know, the difference between, oh, I sent you my resume and my resume talks about my experience at XYZ company versus I just did a live show about branding with live streaming. I'll send you the link to it. Think about the difference between that, right? So you know you need to have a resume. Now you know you need to have a LinkedIn profile. Now, what is live streaming and video and podcasting and blogging and, you know, photography and all these different other things that we do on social? Used correctly, they bring you to life. They take you off the page. You're no longer just existing in black and white text. You're not limited to simply listing your accomplishments or the companies you work for. You're now able to demonstrate to people what you can do. You don't have to say, I honed my communication skills working for XYZ company. You can send somebody a video of you having a conversation, or, you know, you don't have to say, well, I'm very good at teaching people how to use Canva. You can say, here's my latest video where I show people how to edit videos in Canva using blah, 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 blah. And you send it over. And because it's specific, it's more specific than a line or two on a resume. There's going to be an assumption. Look at all the knowledge you had to acquire along the way to get to that point where you could do a video that was niche and in depth. And there's no way to communicate that on a resume. Sure, you can say, oh, you know, I earned $5,000 per sale and, you know, was number one in the set. What does it all mean when you can actually demonstrate the skills that somebody's looking for? And you can't do that on live video for every job and for every field and every industry, but where you can do that, or where you can just make yourself come off the page in 3D with a personality, it's so powerful. I don't know that it can be limited to what is the ROI, but you know you need a resume, you know you need a LinkedIn profile, you know you need to have certain experiences. Think about what having a digital footprint that's effective, what that adds to it. And like I say, I think it's like your resume on steroids.
Yeah, I think those are great points that you mentioned. And just everybody tell us how awesome Ross is in the chat. I mean, he's just dropping knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. And as you say each thing, it makes me think of something else. And,
you know, here's a cool thing, Gord, I should mention. That works for you even if nobody shows up and watches your live video, even if you have 0 subscribers to your podcast, even if nobody ever goes to your website to read your blog, except that person who you know, who gets a referral and thinks that they might want to work with you and then Googles you and finds your blog or your YouTube channel or one of your live streams, or you send them a video and you say, check this out. Right. So all those things that really bring you out in 3 dimension and show your personality and show your skills, when you have a warm lead, and that warm lead could be a potential customer or client, or it could be the potential of getting a job or a promotion or what have you, those things work. Those online, that digital footprint works for you. That's your portfolio. It's your digital resume, and that works for you. Nobody's asking how many views did he get, how many subscribers, how many Twitter followers. If they like what they see, if you're able to communicate in a way that appeals to that person, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So that's where, when people say, you know, organic reach is down on Facebook, I'm not doing Facebook Live anymore. Well, if you're measuring success in Facebook Live and number of live viewers, then yes, absolutely, maybe you shouldn't be doing Facebook Live. But if creating the content on Facebook Live works for you because you like the energy in the chat and there's people that are used to finding you there and they show up and make the show better, and it's easier to get guests because they know what Facebook Live is and things like that, then think about the value of staying on Facebook Live and then perhaps maybe trying another platform or two for another piece of content. And that isn't to say that everybody should stay on Facebook Live. It's just to say that there's a lot more to success than, a few metrics of dealing with your traffic and conversion, so to speak.
No, I'm just making some generalization statements to get your feedback, and you're sharing so much perspective, and I love it. And what I was curious about is, what I love about what you do in your content creation and your news updates is that I'm saying you're like, a creator for creators. So you're showing us what other people are doing. You're posting, you're going to events, you're showing snippets from different experiences and educators and creators out there and all the awesome things they're doing. And then you share knowledge with us through things like your livestreamdeals.com and educate us on products and all kinds of different things. So I see you, so I wanted you to sort of tie this all together and explain to us what is your philosophy and strategy across the different platforms. And I know that's like a long, broad answer, but can you explain to us how you you use Twitter a certain way? You're awesome in your Instagram and Insta stories. I mean, and the highlights in there. I mean, there's just a ton of content you share. And when I experienced reviewing and taking the deep dive into what you deliver, I'm going like, holy cow. Like, I look at Ross in so many dimensions now, and I think it's really masterful what you've put together for us to experience. So can you sort of share a bit on your content strategy and how you deal with that across the platforms, from Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram? Share what you like there.
Yeah, I mean, I just enjoy being a part of the live streaming, community, and if I'm seen as a leader, then that's certainly an honor and something that I appreciate. But I just enjoy seeing people doing good things and seeing them grow and seeing them get better and seeing people sharing value on their shows. And so I enjoy sharing that with other people. It's just something that comes naturally to me, and it's not something that I do seeking reciprocity or seeking, obviously if I share somebody's stuff forever and they never share anybody else's, I might say, okay, you're not at the front of the line next week. But in general, I just enjoy putting a spotlight. I mean, that's a big part. Remember, before I started hosting shows, the purpose of Livestream Universe was really to shine a spotlight and give some attention to the people who were doing shows at that time, primarily on Blab, but also on Periscope and Meerkat, which were the other two big live streaming platforms at that time, because I thought that there was some really good stuff that, was certainly good enough that it could have been on TV or on the radio, or if not, the people had raw talent that was there and were doing some really interesting things within the social context. And that was my idea of starting. It was like, let's put the spotlight on what these people are doing. Coming from a broadcasting background, I just thought it was really good. And so that's always stayed with me, even as I've started doing more of my own content. It's, how can I continue to highlight other people and talk about what's going on more community-wide rather than just talking about what I'm doing. And of course, when you have shows and you have business and you have all these things, you have to promote those and talk about those. But I've never stopped being interested in what other people are doing. And when I see somebody's show that draws me in, or just somebody I know is I don't know how to describe it other than saying they're giving a good, honest effort and they're putting some quality out there. How do you not want to highlight that?
Yeah, absolutely. But what I like that's so different from my perspective, see, I felt my value has always been about my how-to tutorials, where I do deep dives and spend a lot of time to create choreographed tutorials and put that kind of content out. But I haven't focused as much. I'm now trying to shift, because that's what I'm working on doing, to get more involved in the community and social side. So for example, me doing this live stream with you and doing the interviews that I do and I love, people are getting to know me and see me in a different light. So I'm grateful for that. But you were like community from the start, and now I see and understand that you're going to be starting to get more active on YouTube. So you're actually going to go more into producing, I guess, how-to or educational content in addition. So I just find it interesting, the juxtaposition of us, meaning that I come from like hardcore tutorial and shying away from the whole social side of things, and Ross has got, you know, the whole game on the social side and community. It's very interesting and to learn from you. That's why I watch you so much. I go, wow, like how does he do that? And this is brilliant. And you know, just like the perspective you took to highlight people and show others that there's these other talented people out here. Like you're a great, you know, conduit for so much of community that's out there, and so we have a lot to learn from you. And I want to hear as well about your sort of going more into the space of like more formalized education content.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I think that YouTube is an exciting opportunity that, you know, I've treated YouTube more like a portfolio, or if you want to put a negative spin on it, more like an archive. You know, I haven't thought about it as an active social network where I am involved in a community on YouTube. I've thought of it as, this video is done, where can I put it so that I can embed it on my website, and so that if somebody wants to see the breadth of my work, it lays out nicer on a YouTube channel than it does in your Facebook videos in your business page.
Right.
That being said, I still have a similar approach a lot of the ways, because believe it or not, coming soon will be my very first ever vlog.
All right.
I was at DC Podfest this weekend, and I shot a lot of video, some video speeches, videos walking around and taking a look at what was going on, sharing my thoughts on the conference. And so I'm going to put that together, and obviously it's going to highlight a lot of the speakers and people like that. So it's another way of sort of doing the same thing when it comes down to it. It's, you know, look at all these great speakers that were there, and these were some of the lessons that I took away from it. And so that's something that I'm trying. I don't know if it's going to be any good or not, although I would love people to check it out. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Shameless plug. Livestream Universe. Or
yeah,
Ross.
we have our ticker feed going across the bottom, Ross. Just to let everyone know, we have our ticker feed going that shows your different.
But yeah, that's something I'm excited about doing more on YouTube, just because I think it's an opportunity, and I think there is a community on YouTube. And you might say, well, you're doing educational content, but you're part of a community, and that community gathers here for your show. It gathers on Saturday mornings for Nick Nimmin and Dee Nimmin. It gathers for a whole bunch of different YouTube creators who all come out and support each other and continue the conversation across many different channels. And I like what's going on there. And I think that, you know, YouTube's got a long history of online video now, and it's not going anywhere. And I like a new challenge. And so there's a whole culture and way of doing videos, and there's an algorithm you need to learn a little, but there's a lot of little things. And I you know, I've always liked sort of the growth phase. So I'm kind of playing around with it now, and being much more intentional about what I do on YouTube. And that means, you know, thinking about the thumbnail, and thinking about the title, and thinking about what tags I use, and how one video I put out may relate to other content I've done, and am I adding a hashtag, and all these different little things. Am I keeping my content short enough that people will want to sit through it rather than be intimidated to click? So I'm not necessarily taking an hour show and putting that up on YouTube in its entirety anymore. I'm cutting it into a few short segments around topics. All these different things, you know, are not things that I really gave much thought to prior to maybe the last month or so.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I'm really excited to see what you're going to come up with and produce in vlog style, because, you know, I know the perspective you take and what you seek to, you know, capture is quite amazing, because of just all the stuff that you share in general. Now, putting together like a highlight reel at an event will be really great to see, and I'm sure it'll be standout, because you know, you cover it in a special way. So I'm really looking forward to that. And, you know, yeah. And I mean, hey, we had chat the other day and we're talking about video editing and that, and you're just getting more deeper into that. So, you know, it's an exciting experience to be growing now in this area, like you're saying. Just like for me, starting to get more active in live streaming and social, it like really lights the fire of the potential that you see that can happen. And I bet back in your broadcasting days, you wouldn't have seen you know, getting to the stage of doing this kind of thing, would you have, at the start, right?
No, I mean, just putting a few clips together to run them, you know, audio clips was basically the most that I did on the production side, or I put together some piece and it was just taking interviews and basically slotting them along in a, you know, a linear format or whatever, maybe adding a music bed under it. But this is a whole new game. And, you know, it's why I say, like, you know, there's tech, but it's not as difficult as you think it is if you take it step by step. First of all, the 90% of what, you know, these different editing programs offer, you probably don't even need to use in the beginning. And then as you need, if you add one step at a time, okay, I need to add a background. How do I do that? I need to add text. How do I do that? Maybe I want that text to come shooting in. Is that animating? What do I do with that? Right. So you can certainly edit a video together of different clips from an event without knowing how to do almost any of that stuff, but just putting it into a linear, okay, here's one clip that ends, then there's a transition, another clip, or maybe no transition, so it looks more like a jump cut, whatever. You know, and so that's another thing. I want to learn how you guys on YouTube do these really cool jump cuts. So that's another thing I want to learn.
Well, it was like we talked about end screens, and I showed you a few examples of the way you can do that. But I said, hey, for now, this is great. I mean, there's several levels you can go to and juice it up and layer all kinds of effects and things. So yeah, I totally agree with that approach. Like, people shouldn't shy away from getting their feet wet and trying something and putting something out there because they can't do all of these other things just yet. Like, we all start somewhere and we're developing our skills, and through connection, just like, you know, like I meet you and other people, you know, we can all sort of help each other and give each other a little guidance along the way to get our skills up. And, you know, that's why I'm really excited to see what Ross is going to start to produce on YouTube. It's going to be cool. And another philosophy, by the way, is that I look at content that I produce mostly for YouTube as evergreen style content. So that's my philosophy in every piece I create, even our discussion here tonight. I look at my live streams as trying to be able to share a lot of knowledge for people that are looking into live streaming and branding and doing it for business or their personal brand, or understanding the gear, which is where we're going into next, because you so nicely mentioned it. So I try to see the content that I create to be for that purpose. So consequently, it's harder for me to think about the other social media in the ecosystem like Facebook and Instagram, and thinking about how in many cases the stuff's much more temporary and kind of disappears. So I struggle with trying to think that what I might produce to throw out on an Instagram story, like I did one for us tonight, just for 2 seconds, and it was like, I'm just not used to this, you know, and it takes a shift or a growth in mindset to get there. Do you know what I mean? Depending on where you're at, and we're all learning. Like, so like, you know, you're describing that mindset or change or open mindset for you to develop your skill for producing vlog content for things like YouTube, right?
Yeah, and you know what? It all comes around to distribution and providing content in the formats and on the platforms where people like to consume it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if nothing else, the Blab experience, because I was all, you know, my show was on Blab. I mean, it was as much like Blab was as much of the branding of my show as Livestream Universe or my name. So, you know, I learned when Blab started falling apart that you can't be about a platform in social.
Right.
And so when you create a live stream show, you understand that the number of people who watch it live and participate in the chat, and while they may be my first priority is the experience of those people who show up live, I also know that there are more people who are going to watch the replay, and there are more people who may see a video clip on Instagram or may, watch a 10-minute clip of it on LinkedIn, or may, catch, some YouTube videos that I make from it. In other words, this is one part of the audience that's here live, but the potential to reach people through podcasting, through YouTube, through, Brian Fanzo talks about like 8 pieces of content from one live video or whatever. I mean, really, it's about getting that content in front of people where they consume it best. It's not saying, okay, the win is if I can get 10 new subscribers to my YouTube channel. No, the win is if you can get 100 people who all love your content and know you, and maybe 10 of those people might even want to work with you. But if you can get, 10 times that number of people who are opting in, whether it's, 10 subscribe here or 5 subscribe here, but maybe 3 opt in to subscribing to your podcast, and 2 like your Facebook page, and another one, follows your Instagram account because they saw your video through a hashtag search they did, and so forth. It all comes down to there's live, there's video on demand, and there's audio. And if you can distribute your content in all 3 of those platforms, then you're just so greatly increasing the opportunity for people to find you and listen to you and watch you in the format on the platforms where they enjoy consuming content. And what does that mean? That means you're going live probably on either Facebook or YouTube. If you're a gamer or an IRL streamer, maybe you're going live on Twitch. If you've already got a big following on Periscope, then maybe you're doing Periscope or Twitter. But when you talk about video on demand, that's largely going to be what you put up to YouTube. That's the primary place people go to search for videos. But you can also put videos on LinkedIn. You can put videos on Facebook that are recorded, and then podcasting, ripping that audio, maybe doing a separate intro, doing a separate closing, but ripping that audio and making it into a podcast gives an entirely different community of people who never sit in front of their computer and watch YouTube videos, who don't have time at their office or in their, they're in their car. They're not on, they're almost off the grid most of the day. So how can they consume content? They can consume those podcasts that they download into their phone and they listen to while they're working out, while they're going for a walk, while they're driving, while they're taking the train, while they're, in their office and they've got it on their earbuds while their boss thinks they're talking on a phone call. So there's many ways that people can consume that content, and by making it available, you're just increasing the chances that more people can find you, and that the people that you want to work with or work for or collaborate with are going to come across your content. And that's more important than saying, okay, I did really well on this one platform. That isn't to say you don't go hard on your primary platform, the platform where you have the biggest following. But it's also understanding that, while I have my biggest following on, or I used to have my biggest following on Twitter, I now actually have a bigger following on LinkedIn. But I know that isn't what's going to deliver for me. Right. Because if I go live on Facebook and people share it, even if I have 1/10 of the audience on Facebook than I have on Twitter, by the time people share it, and just the mere fact that, you don't always get a lot of click-throughs on Twitter anymore. It just depends on what you share and when you share it and what kind of, how it sort of fits in. And again, Twitter is very much a live platform now, too. It's about sharing from live events and live breaking news and things like that. So making a long answer short, if you can leverage different platforms, different styles of content, and be in the places where different people like to consume that content. I mean, I can't think of a better way to increase your reach and increase the possibilities that come from the work that you're doing. I mean, don't limit something that can be shared on multiple platforms to just one.
Okay, so I hear that, but then are you saying your philosophy is kind of like what Professor Nez says, try to be everywhere? The reason why I ask that is because I see it as people should at least try the different platforms and see. I say you don't always know where the audience is if you haven't touched or tried to deliver content to some of the different platforms and see what kind of response you get. So for example, for me, I'm just, soon to update my LinkedIn profile that's been ancient for years, not updated. And, I'm going to be very curious to see what happens there, because a lot of the kind of work and the production work I do and the coaching and helping can serve a community that's, easily on LinkedIn. So I'm kind of excited, and I can see rationalizing spending energy to produce content for LinkedIn. But then, Twitter obviously is not a huge effort to produce stuff to share there. You can usually leverage things through links and stuff like that. But I see it as people need to experiment. And, yes, there's logical places where your audience would be, like I do how-to work. So, yeah, YouTube is where my core platform is going to be. But I'm not sure that what I do will resonate on Instagram or Instagram stories, and I'm probably going to have to change up, take another direction, or show another dimension to me altogether, right? Like I'm doing here in live streaming.
But how do you know it won't resonate?
No, I'm saying I don't know. Right. And I think we should all have to try
it. It may be taking a clip from a video. It may be doing specifically a very short tutorial, like a 45-second to a minute. Like, let me just show you how to do this one thing in Asia, and I'll show you in 45 seconds, and that's one more thing. And you see how it goes. And then some of those people may come over and subscribe to your YouTube channel because they'll want to go deeper, and other people might not. But they may help you grow on Instagram, and you may find that there's a market for 45-second videos, maybe even a market for selling 45-second videos as tutorials on demand. But, the question about should you be everywhere, I've certainly answered that with a resounding no due to my dislike of Snapchat. Okay, I make no bones about it. If you don't like a platform and you don't enjoy being on it, and you don't feel like it's the right platform for you to be creating content, or you don't feel your audience is there, no, it doesn't make sense for me to invest 1 second in Snapchat. Right. And you have to figure out other things. I don't spend a lot of time doing live streams on Periscope. I have a big, I have a nice size following for, an everyday person on Twitter, but I never really built up my Periscope following, and I just don't think that that's necessarily time well spent. Although now that there is live audio only, that's a way I can mix up my content for people who may just want to listen to audio lives instead of watching. So that's something to think about, because now it's adding a new dimension to it. So no, I mean, for me, I think you should you go where your strengths are, where your audience is, where you enjoy going. It's like you have to do one of those charts where you put the bunch of circles and then see what meets in them. Where the most things meet in the middle. Yeah, I mean, do you like the platform? Do you like doing content for the platform? Does the platform drive results? Do you have an audience there? Does it benefit your content, or does it make your content worse? Do you have a skill set for, all those things should factor in. And sometimes it's just the culture of the platform. I mean, whenever Snapchat came out with a new feature, I would be like, oh, that's stupid. That's for kids. I don't care about that. Then Instagram comes out with the feature, and it's like, oh, cool. There's stories on Instagram now. So, I mean, some of it's because Instagram's a platform I have to be on every day, so I better accommodate to how the platform changes and the different features. Doesn't mean I use all the features, but I've come to like stories on Instagram. It's different how I'm connected to people on Instagram and how I use Instagram than how I would have used Snapchat. And that's not to knock anybody who uses Snapchat. People have had tremendous success in building their personal brand and even in driving business on Snapchat. But for me, no, that's not a platform. So being everywhere, I don't think is always the answer. Now, there's a side area of that question, which is multi-streaming, multi-channel live streaming, which may be what Nez was, one of the things Nez was talking about, because I know he at times, I think, has streamed to multiple platforms.
Yes.
And I think that's great. If you can manage multiple platforms, and you have an audience on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, and you can engage with all of those audiences, or you have a way of saying, okay, the primary chat is here. If you're on this other platform, come on over to the primary chat. I think that's good. If you can handle the tech for doing that, and you feel you can manage it, and that there's an audience that you want to build or is already there. Yeah, I mean, I was always a one platform person because I didn't want to deal with looking at multiple chats and all that. But I've come up with a way that I rigged together where I can run my audio to where I can send it. Like, if I could send this conversation, not just with my audio, but with my audio from this microphone and your audio to Instagram, so I could be live on one platform through my computer and Instagram through my phone, but with the good audio and with my guest. And so that to me is super cool. And I have the phone here and I look over at the comments, and that's something that I've enjoyed. So when I do a live stream, usually it's often when I do a spontaneous live stream, I'll be like, it'd be fun to go live on Instagram, because I get more viewers on Facebook, but there's something about the Instagram community that's very much enthusiastic when you go live there, and people stay engaged for a while. And you also get that vertical video. So there's another way to repurpose. You can put that video on IGTV, if anybody's still using IGTV, and that remains to be seen where that's going.
Yeah,
but
so
I put some of the videos. I made sure when I went to this event this weekend, I shot vertically and I shot horizontally, because I wanted to have video to put on IGTV and video to put on YouTube. So I would, shoot one part of the speech. I'd capture some lines from somebody, then I'd flip it around and grab some stuff vertically.
Okay, that's been a whole bunch of knowledge bombs that was great. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad you took I took a sip of water there too. I'm very curious to know, when you first started to do the stuff on camera, how was it for you to adapt from being on radio to now you're on camera? How was that for you as an experience change? What habits did you have to break or establish new as an experience for you as someone using your voice and sharing your content?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't initially super comfortable on camera, and I still to this day don't remember always to look at the camera. You know how a lot of radio shows now are simulcast on TV, but they're shown radio style. So the hosts aren't necessarily looking at the camera. The camera's sort of looking in on the show. And then, so I kind of am sort of a little bit in that mode. I try to make an effort, but I don't always look at the camera. But my lighting's gotten better. I'm certainly much more, I'm totally comfortable now with being on camera, which in the very beginning, I wasn't as comfortable. I also, while I still talk with my hands and move around, I'm not doing this sort of leaning back stuff all the time and whatever. So I think I'm acculturating to the medium a little bit more. I've got lighting. I've got a little bit of a background. I've got a long way to go. I mean, I can get better lights. I can get a more interesting background. There's a lot of things that I still want to do. And I want to, in 2019, also use different locations and things like that. But I always say that the most important part of your live video is the audio. When you're doing shows like we are, when you're doing interviews, talk shows, educational content, if the visual isn't up to par, people can still enjoy the show and get what they need to get out of it. They can
Right.
enjoy the conversation. They can take notes. They can learn from it if it's an educational video. If the audio goes out, then you're really left with nothing, right? Because how long can you watch two people doing this and not get bored of it, right? And you can't, all that information and the conversation, the laughter and the dialogue and, you know, the news and whatever else is being discussed, it's all lost. And so I think, you know, you can certainly go further with good audio and mediocre video technique than you can with, you know, poor audio and a perfect video picture.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like from the get-go for me, because I had initial interest in voiceover work, I made sure my microphone was like the #1 thing where I focused, and I knew that the webcam stuff, you know, is at a certain acceptable level for doing live streaming and stuff like that. But yeah, no, you know, I've had people, because I have multiple mics, and because I do a in studio piece at the front and end of a lot of my pre-recorded stuff, and then the tutorial, there's 2 different mics involved, and I had something off that was significant enough that, you know, at one point I had a couple of complaints about it. So yeah, people are very sensitive to the audio, and it can be distracting, you know, if it's not at least a certain quality threshold, I like to call it. Yeah. Now,
I think what we're doing here is closer to live radio than even podcasting is. Because even though there's cameras here, we're live, just like a radio show. People are coming in and coming out. The conversation is paramount. We're both using microphones that, you know, are particularly flattering to the voice, rather than like a lapel microphone, which would pick up a little more background noise or what have you,
right.
and wouldn't be as. So we're using microphones because we can make podcasts out of this. We know the audio in an untreated room is going to be better using a radio style or voiceover style mic. You're using a voiceover. I'm using a. I mean, this can be used for voiceover. Yours could be used in broadcast, but in general, this is thought of more as a broadcast mic, and your mic is probably more of a voiceover mic. But neither one of those would you necessarily see in a typical television studio.
Right.
But a television studio has expensive boom mics and expensive lav mics, and it's treated for sound. And you know, certainly TV is first, and they're not necessarily thinking of distributing it as a podcast and all that stuff.
Right.
What we're doing is almost like radio on TV in a sense, going back to that analogy. And so the other way that it's like, in many ways, it's more like live radio, what we're doing than is podcasting, is that, you know, podcasting, everybody starts at the beginning. And for the most part, they listen in a linear fashion. Here, people are coming in and out. You need to recap a little bit. You need to promote what's coming up. You need to be conscious of the fact that not everybody's with you the whole time. You want to try and retain people. You want to, it's a different thing, whereas you can tell a narrative beginning to end in a story in a podcast, and you assume that everybody who's with you at minute 40 was with you at minute 1. But this is more like live radio, where it's like people are getting in and out of their cars. People are opting into your channel, and then they're going to get something to eat, and then they're coming back to see if we're still on. And, you know, that's sort of the pattern. So there's a lot of different ways. You could take it even further, but there's a lot of ways. To me, this style of live streaming, and that's the style that I first encountered on Blab, to me is almost more like doing live radio than is podcasting.
Yeah, that sounds right on, from now that I hear you package it that way. I'm curious to know, just taking a sort of a little sidebar for a second, you published last year, and I believe the year before, like a publication sort of like on the predictions for the following year. Like last year you did 91 predictions for 2018. Can you sort of tell me how that came about? Like I love the idea, and obviously you're bringing together community and all kinds of cool stuff. Like, so how did that come about?
So this is actually going to be the fourth annual.
Oh, it's the fourth. I'd
I'm
only
so
known of
excited
two.
for it to.
Yeah, cool.
I'm starting to send out invites for people to contribute their predictions again this year. So 2015, the winter of 2015, the fall of 2015 into the winter of 2015 was when I started live streaming, and within a few months, I just thought it would be really cool. Like, it was also new. The Blab was new, and Periscope and Meerkat were all in their first year, and so this was a very new thing, live streaming to social media platforms like that. And I was just wanted to get people's thoughts of what was next. And so the first year, I think we did 36 or 37, and then the second year was 88 because I got to know a lot more people.
Sure.
I had a lot more people on my shows. This past year was 91. And I think I've got a list of about 140 something people that I'm sending invites to. And, you know, we'll see. Maybe we'll hit 100 depending on how many people are interested and contribute predictions.
Very cool. I just love that idea because there's not really much out like that. It's almost like you know, like magazine featuring the top 100 of the year or something like that, you know, but now you're doing it and sharing it through social, which I think is, like, you know, pretty neat.
And what's fun about it is, even though I call it live streaming, it encompasses YouTube videos and podcasting and you know, other forms of audio and video and content creation. And so many people have different areas and platforms where they produce their content, so you really get a wide variety of thoughts on a good overview of the sort of the entire industry.
Yeah, that's great. Now let's shift into talk a bit about the tech and the gear a little more closely. We've talked about it to a degree so far, but I wanted to first start out by asking you, at Vid Summit this year, Daryl Leaves came up with his 24/5 in real life streaming concept, and as we know, like, Dan Norton was on for quite a bit of time, and
Dan was rocking it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just totally amazing what he did, and we did it. I did an interview with him as well, a live stream to talk all about that experience, and it was just amazing what he shared. And what I wanted to ask you was, I see that you now have, like, you have the Live View Solo, you have your Mix Pre 3. You got your Electro Voice RE50 and your Sony 4K cam. When is Ross gonna strap on all the gear and do something? There you go. See?
Yeah, I got this because of I didn't even know it existed. Yeah, I want to do IRL, not necessarily where, you know, you're following me around all day while I do random boring stuff, but the ability to go to events and give a tour around, you know, stop by and talk to all the different vendors or show what's going on in different sessions and as it happens and talk to different people is exciting to me. And while I love my live streaming setup where I do interviews, in which I use the Mix Pre 3 and I use a bigger camcorder, it's not that big, but it's bigger than this. And I try and get the pro audio so I can, you know, make a podcast from it with the handheld mic and all that stuff. That isn't necessarily realistic for a situation where you're walking and talking and you need to be able to set up quickly, break down quickly. You know, you need to be able to balance it on a monopod or small tripod. So going with something like this, which is, I mean, I fit it between two fingers, right? Like, I could. Here, you want to see how small this is? Look at my phone. This is an iPhone 7, so it's not even a big iPhone. I could line up 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4, maybe 5 of those right along.
Well, maybe you could put a cap together and do 360 panorama.
There you go. There you go. Wrap some bands around it and have it all. get three or four going in different directions. And from what I saw at Vid Summit, this gets pretty good audio right from here. You can attach a mic, so you could attach a little boom mic or something like that. So it definitely frees me up to be able to set up quickly, just screw it onto a tripod, take it off, pop in a new memory card, go again, record, live stream, whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And you run an HDMI cord from this into the Live View Solo, and you can live stream to Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube, or wherever you want to go.
But I could see you easily when you go to, event like your, what was it, NAB or Podcast Fest, or whenever you go into something like an exhibit hall and you're looking at different things and different vendors, you can have like, little conversations that you can accumulate content for. But I guess the question is it a live stream experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the being able to bring that's the kind of thing that people enjoy live, more than anything, because you're bringing them along with you. You're giving them access to something that maybe they couldn't make it to, or a chance to see it through your eyes and hear the questions that you're asking and all that. And again, being able to travel light, where you're able to hold this in one hand, you don't have a handheld mic or anything else, means, I can pick up some gear and I can ask somebody a question about the gear in one hand and still have that monopod there where I'm shooting video of myself and the person I'm talking to, or even put it down on a table if it has legs. So it's a very easy to maneuver and handle setup. And you combine it with the Live View Solo, and it should keep you on the air most places.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed at that, how you can just kind of like put the wearable gear on and go. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, you could put this in a helmet or something, and you could, Ross cam, and here I go. But I think people would rather see you talking to somebody and engaging with somebody. The way Dan did it was, and Daryl Eves did it, was really great.
Yeah, no, I think it was incredible, because having been able to attend the year before, I kind of really was able to get the vibe a lot that I got but when I was present in the area, getting to meet all the people and network. And I think that, they did such a great job, and, Dan was doing a great job of bringing all those people present together, right? And I thought that was really, really cool. And now, in looking at your home studio, you have your Shure SM, pardon me, my throat's very dry. Your Shure SM7B, the MixPre 3, and you use things like Be Live TV, Wirecast, and all of this stuff. Now, the technology's there now that you can do a lot of stuff that you would normally have to do in post-production. You can have transitions, animations, stingers, audio effects, everything. So it now, not only do you have a live chat to follow, to engage in, you have a show to run and an experience to give. Like the bar seems to be being lifted more and more, but I think it's creating a lot more interesting live streaming experience. Like here, I'm using OBS a little, and I could do a lot more with stingers and all kinds of things too, but I'm not at that level yet. But in some of those services like Be Live, which is something you use, I believe, right? And Wirecast, you have the ability to add a lot of that stuff in. And so what are your thoughts about that? And when is it considered too much? Like, how do you balance that and being able to stay focused too?
Well, the conversation comes first, right? The conversation we're having is the number one priority. And then, being able to, for the host, being able to keep an eye on the chat and bring in good questions and, comments and things like that, and let that inform where the conversation goes or the questions that you ask your guests as well. That's really the most important things. But whether you use a platform, say, like Be Live, that allows you to switch shots, add simple lower thirds, put your own logo on, it's restricted in what you can do, but it lets you add professional elements very easily without needing to learn complicated software. Makes it very easy to get your guest on. So that's why I've used Be Live for a lot of my shows. And I believe that having some text on the screen, having some switching shots and layouts and things like that, all that gives people a reason, particularly on Facebook, where there's so many distractions and so many choices. It helps lead people to have a reason to stop in the news feed, because remember, you're especially on mobile, you're making a decision whether to click on something before you can hear it. So seeing some text on a screen, seeing an interesting layout of guests, seeing a lower third, probably the best of all features that Be Live brought was putting the comments on the screen, where you've got the person's Facebook profile picture, and then you can put that comment up. That's huge, being able to share the comments from the chat, highlight those comments you want to bring in, put the question on the screen that was asked so you don't have to repeat it for everybody necessarily. All that is big. Now, what Wirecast does, and really taking it to the next level, is you can brand that, and you know this from using OBS, you have complete freedom to brand. You know, your logo doesn't have to be in this corner, and your lower third doesn't have to use this kind of text, and this, you know, you can choose the color and background for Be Live. But Livestream, Wirecast, I'll get it eventually, Wirecast, you can, much like you can with ScreenFlow or Camtasia and Post, you're only limited by your imagination and your capability with the software. It is a complete solution. You can bring in multiple cameras. You can design your shots any way you want to. You can put your branding wherever you want it. It's an amazingly powerful, professional software for the price, and it's not inexpensive. But when you think about what all that it can do, you're like, wow. I mean, I for a long time I used it every day, not for live content, but I used it as a switching solution in order to do updates that I was doing, in order to switch shots where, you know, I'm doing the news kind of thing, and you got the picture in picture, and you have the show cards come up as I talk about different shows, or a clip playing or whatever. And so I used Wirecast for all that, whether I was live streaming it or I was recording it. And I even recorded my my podcast intros and even a full-length podcast into Wirecast. Now I record it into ScreenFlow when I'm doing something like that, because I don't necessarily have a need with a podcast to do switching or anything. So you're just one step closer to editing. But yeah, that is a software that I'm just in love. I'm in love with Wirecast.
Well, I love the idea that you can put all of that in to the live stream, and then when you go to repurpose your content after, you have much less work to do to tune it up, tweak it up, dress it up, because you were able to put that into the live experience. So, and I think that the cost of these services, like I know Wirecast is like, you know, the most expensive, but probably the most feature rich. But there's other solutions like vMix and all kinds of other things, and Be Live, and you know, all kinds of derivations, combinations, and other things for the Mac, like Ecamm Live and other stuff. But
that's great.
The cost for the time saving is incredible, because to actually do it in the editing is a lot more work. So I think the services are a great addition to help equalize the field for people that don't have the skill to do the editing work after. But you know, as you know, like you're starting to explore now, that the editing also gives you latitude to do things that you aren't able to do all the time anyways, right? And
not all content is best live, right? You don't do a vlog live. You record pieces and then you put them together, and obviously having some ability to do editing and add things in post and all that is extremely helpful for that kind of content. One of the things I'm really excited about with Wirecast is that Skype now has this new creator platform that makes it easy. I think it's through the NDI technology. I'm not positive what the technology is exactly, but it enables you, if you have Skype open on your computer and you have Wirecast, or within the same network, local network, you can just drop that video of your conversation from Skype into Wirecast as a shot with the audio. I mean, one of the biggest things, that kept me from using Wirecast for some of my talk shows is it's a little bit complicated and time consuming to get a guest on and make sure you've routed your audio properly. With this new move by Skype, it makes it a lot easier. Now, Wirecast also added its own ability to do something like this with, I think they call it Rendezvous, and I played around with it a little bit. But this Skype thing, you could use this with OBS. There's several supported platforms for it, and that saves you time of having to scrape the images off of the screen from Skype or Zoom and then put them in. Like, it just takes it from Skype, and there it is. And now you got a shot of you got a shot of me, you got the shot of us together, and you're ready to go. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to start trying that, because by making it easier to get guests on, it's only going to enable me to make more use of the powerful features in Wirecast for talk shows and interview shows as well.
I apologize. My voice is great, increasingly degrading, but I'm doing the best I can. And thank you, Beth. Yes, I'll be dousing my throat with tea and honey after. I had a weird experience technology-wise tonight. I was able to enter YouTube comments earlier, and every comment I've been trying to enter, it says, error, try again. And it's like it's blocked. So I can't enter anything, but I see everyone here, and thank you so much again. I hope you're enjoying our conversation tonight. And so Ross, what do you think about people? Do you see the technology getting to be overwhelming, or it's not really overwhelming? It's that it's getting feature rich and you can use as much as you want and take it a step at a time. Like, what's your perspective? Because some people may look at this and go, oh my God. Like, I know when I first started, just even looking at the chat and trying to be present with the guest was a challenge for me in the beginning, and I was like so intimidated by it. Now having to think about managing, throwing up a stinger for my branding, doing different shots with the guests and different angles and flipping, like you're the producer in the room, you know what I mean?
I think on one hand, something like Be Live shows that the technology is getting to a place where it's becoming easier for the average user to add professional elements to their broadcast without needing to spend a ton of money or have that big learning curve. I also think, again, these different professional elements add something, but they don't make a show. The best lower thirds and graphics and scene switching and shots and all that means nothing if the content isn't there.
Right. Exactly.
Everything that I've been able to do, I did with a $50 microphone, almost no lighting, the built-in webcam. I mean, it's within the last, March maybe, I got this microphone. I got, I've since gotten the Mix Free 3 and whatever, but I was using a $50 microphone. I've since put 2 regular lamps in a place where I actually get lighting and I'm on. I got a Logitech external camera. I have a couple other cameras I could now use as well. But the bottom line is I had well established myself as a live streamer before I got any of this stuff.
Right.
And so it's the old, the commercial, they used to do the commercial with Michael Jordan, like it's the shoes money or what? No, it's not the shoes. I could wear the best pair of basketball sneakers. I wouldn't be as good as Michael Jordan on his worst day, right? It's these things accentuate, a good performance, but they don't make it. And I think when I see people, they go out and they get a ton of gear before they've done anything, they've now put a lot of pressure on themselves that, wow, I've got to live up to. You shouldn't have to live up to your gear. You should get the gear when it's like, okay, I could use better gear for what I'm doing. Where you're the gear comes up to the level of your content. You get the gear to meet the content, or to meet an opportunity or a paid opportunity, or a demand for doing something that that doing that with a certain level of gear makes it better.
Yeah.
But when you spend the money first before you've put word one on the page, or you've recorded your first episode or whatever, imagine how bad you're going to feel when that first episode isn't that good, which is like almost always the case with the first, right? You're going to feel awful. Like, I just spent all this money. I'm a serious broadcaster, and now I stink. What's going on here?
Actually,
if you spend $50 on a microphone and you stink, and you go, okay, I made a small investment. It wasn't that good, but I'll do another one, and I'll do another one, and it'll get better. You don't have that. Like, you're not putting that pressure on yourself. You're not spending money before you need it. No, once you know that you need something, you'll know when you know, if that makes sense. You just
but you know what's interesting? Another angle to this is we're talking also partially about shiny object syndrome, thinking that purchase is going to instantaneously put us at some level. But the irony is, oftentimes we make that purchase, and in my case, in the beginning, I never wanted to go on camera, and I mastered whiteboard sketching videos. This is like several years back now, and I didn't want to go on camera. So I purchased, I can't tell you how many software assets for special effects and software applications to do certain kinds of techniques and visual displaying of certain things and alpha transparency, this and that, and every permutation combination. I kept accumulating and piling up these assets because I looked at them as, well, if I can entertain them with those things, I don't have to get on camera. So I would say in the beginning, I used a lot more animations than I do now. The animations I use mostly now are to complement the experience as a screencast. But I used to like put a ton of them in just to compensate for thinking that I wasn't at a level good enough now, and that would carry me through till I got better. It's kind of interesting, but some people use these things as crutches too.
Yeah, I mean, I think too often people say, well, if I only had this piece of gear, then I could do that. But the fact is, whatever it is that you want to do, you can probably do with this phone right here, or with your computer and your built-in webcam and a set of earbuds, or spend, again, I always recommend the Samson QU2 as a first microphone because it plugs in USB, but it comes with XLR. And for my humble opinion, it's a much better microphone than the more popular ATR 2100. Looks more professional. It's just it comes with a little bit better stand, although it's good to get it off your desk. But that's what you need. You need something in your ears so that your guest's voice isn't coming through the speaker and then coming back through the microphone. And if you can hear yourself, then it reduces the ability to be shouting and things like that, because you can clearly hear that you're on and you can modulate your voice a little better. But that's it. That's all you need. Your computer has a built-in webcam. You probably have a lamp somewhere in your house. Go for it. Whatever you want to create, you can create. In terms of what we're doing, you could do with very limited. Obviously, you get to, I see our buddy Lenny from Sarasota is in the chat. Obviously, you can't do drone videos, which he does some awesome drone, but you can't do that without a drone. So there's, if you want to do drone videos, you need a drone. But if you want to do what we're doing while having, having a mic that costs $400 isn't going to make you $400 better than having another mic. It's going to make you $10 better, maybe 15 at a time. Maybe when you need to do something, it'll make you 20 or 25. Maybe you'll learn how to do something in post that a better mic will give you a cleaner recording. So it'll, yes, you can tell a difference. If I were to switch from this to a Samson Q2U now, or if I were to take out the Mix Pre and plug a different audio interface in, you could certainly tell the difference But if I came in using a USB mic that was plugged in and I was on the mic and, doing what I do, you wouldn't be like, I can't watch this show. Ross is on isn't on a good mic or whatever. It would sound fine. You wouldn't even think about the difference, probably. It's only if I were to compare them. And even if I were to compare them right here, you'd have to really be paying attention and have an ear for these things to notice. So, again, I had no shortage of invites to be on shows when I was using my webcam sitting in the dark.
Right, that's a great point.
So yes, I much more love that I'm bringing a better visual, that I'm bringing better audio to the shows that I go on. But I did it when the time was right and the opportunities were there, and I needed it, not did it first and then goes, let me see if I can create content with this.
Yeah. No, I mean, we had this a discussion point the other day where I said I'm looking at getting some kind of like strip processor to take the output from here and do a little more management of the noise gate and different elements, so like I don't hear typing if I participate in chat and different things like that. And it's like that wasn't, it's not critical. People are showing up to see who the host and the guests are and hear what they have to say.
Right. More people aren't going to come to your show because you use a channel strip.
Yeah. They won't even know.
Right. But you don't know why you would need one. Not because it's a shiny object, but you've got a very specific issue that that piece of gear may help solve. Solve.
Yeah.
Right? You have to try it.
Yeah.
But it could help solve that.
Yeah. So, Ross, I wanted to sort of like as a last general topic here, was talk about monetization. So when you're doing, like obviously you're involved with a variety of sponsors. Did you set out with a model in mind, like a revenue model or structure? Like Livestream Deals is very supportive of, a sponsorship style thing plus affiliate opportunities. So can you share with us, some structural ideas towards monetization as a live streamer content creator?
So there's a couple different ways that I monetize. One is through doing consulting, broadcast consulting, live stream consulting, helping businesses get started with live streaming. The other way is actually hosting shows and being the talent for live stream shows. Okay. And so those are the two areas. I would say for most people, and this is how I started out doing it. It's, you create some content, you keep at it, you promote that content, and you can sell directly. I got this phone here, and this is, that's sort of what I'm doing with live stream deals, but I'm really selling other people's products, not my own on that show. So that's one way. I talk about the three paths to monetizing. Let's leave aside sponsors and being paid to host shows and things like that. One way is selling, whether that's your products or it's being an affiliate or selling for in that case, it could be selling for a sponsor, but it's selling. And that's not where most people are comfortable where they start when they start out. I certainly wasn't. And, I need to get more comfortable selling my own stuff in addition to other people's stuff. The second way is, providing value and building relationships, time and rapport. And, over that time, people get to know you. You've provided value in certain subjects, which may or may not be related to your business, but people come to know who you are. And then when they need that product or service, they may come to you. And that's kind of where most people, I think, are when they go into live streaming, who have some success in monetizing it. And then the third way, which is, something that I'm really big on and has worked well for me, and it's what I really think is the most underutilized way, and that's what I call the portfolio method, where, yes, what you do live is important. The relationships are important. Being able to sell and have a call to action is important. But it's ultimately how you build your digital footprint, how you make use of that content. I'm not so much interested in live streaming as, okay, somebody finds me and then they start the process down the funnel and all that. I'm interested in converting the person that calls you, Gordon, and says, who's somebody you know who could help me with live streaming? And you go, well, I think Ross might be able to help you.
Right.
And then what they do is they go Google me and they find my LinkedIn, and then they check out my YouTube channel and they check out my website. And hopefully I have good quality content out there that's laid out in a professional manner, where they can see evidence of what I can do. And it would work the same way as if I was, applying for a traditional job. And it works for me as well when I'm, going to be talent on a show or something like that. So that's what I think more people could benefit from, is using live streaming as part of their online digital portfolio, digital resume, whatever you want to call it. Because even though people aren't watching that live, there's still that something, as we started out talking about. There's still that something when people know you did something live, that you didn't hire a production company, that you didn't write out your commercial and shoot it 16 times, but where they see you in real time, even if it's not real time for them, but it was real time at some time, interacting with people. I think a lot of people would do better in monetizing their online content in general if they focused on how it appears to the person Googling them, more so than how many likes or even newsletter signups or all that. Because when you're a solopreneur, you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, you're a consultant or a coach, you know that one or two clients can make a difference in your revenue for that month or that quarter. It's certainly a lot easier to close a warm lead than it is to get people through the funnel from discovering your live stream to signing up to your email list to booking a 20-minute call to subscribing to your podcast and watching all your videos, and then eventually deciding they want to work with you. So I focus on the warm leads, the lower hanging fruit.
It's interesting.
And I do that with having, instead of a paper resume or just a static LinkedIn profile, I've got a ton of content out there that people can look at, and they can decide, do I think I would work well with this person, or do I not think I would work? Do I like what he talks about? Do I not like? Do I like his business philosophy? And hopefully that answer comes out in the yes column more times than not when somebody's already perhaps favorably disposed to working with you, and they just want that reassurance, and your digital portfolio can provide that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. From my experience, people see me on different videos. As an example for myself, like some people saw me in interviews and that Dusty Porter did with me and on an interview there and different places, and then they go to check my portfolio. They go to check out my channel. Like I ask, it's common sense to ask everyone, well, how did you discover me, kind of thing. And it's interesting. It's so true. And another company where they asked me to do some of their training videos, they looked at the quality of product that I was producing for my training videos, and that's how they got to like me. So it's not so much about, like you're saying, going out to grab the people to pull them to you. If your portfolio is good quality and you have lots of opportunity to be 24/7 discovered, depending on where that audience those people go to. So
it's like a form of passive income that nobody calls passive income.
Yeah.
But you know what? It monetizes for you more than affiliate links and sometimes
Absolutely.
all the other things that we put out on social, hoping that somebody will click onto. Actually having that digital footprint that works for a potential customer or client, or somebody hiring for a company that's looking for the skills and talents that you have. I mean, there's no better way to show somebody that you can make an instructional video, or that you can teach people than to actually have them watch your video and see you do it, right? I mean, words on a resume or bragging in a LinkedIn profile or whatever is not nearly as powerful as actually having a video where you show doing exactly what they're looking to hire you to do.
Yeah.
And when you're in any kind of field where you can do that, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use live video and recorded video and audio as well to get that message across for that industry or for that specific talent or skill set.
And this raises another interesting point about quality of content. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. So many people, in the case of the YouTube world, feel the pressure about, am I creating the content right to satisfy the algorithm, to grow my subscribers and my views? And you know, it's easy to get carried away by the stats. I call it the gamification of the whole thing. And then consequently, oh, I got to get something out because I'm late. And, you know, yes, consistency and frequency and all that stuff is very important, but I don't think it's worth the sacrifice of the quality of what you're going to put out, because that's part of your digital portfolio, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I've been able to monetize my YouTube channel before I treated it like a channel. When I just treated it like an archive, just having the sheer volume and what I believe was the quality of some of what I put out on the YouTube channel, which was simply just repurposing my live streams, basically uploading them. I got opportunities because of that. And, you know, I don't think of myself as a YouTuber or anything like that, although now I'm starting to dip my toe in those waters. I'm starting to be more intentional. But simply having that portfolio in a place where people could, you know, where does the average person think, okay, the guy does some video thing with streaming, where am I going to, let's see if he has a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Right. And,
so
and
true.
that's where people find it. Yeah, I think some of the worst live streams are when somebody starts out by going, hey guys, haven't been live in a while. Thought I would jump on and say hello.
Yeah,
why don't we wait until a few more people get here? I don't really have anything to talk about, but I thought I'd come on and just hang out. And what's everybody up to?
Where are you from?
Yeah, where's everybody from? Throw that in the chat. Maybe I'll get a couple comments. And there's nothing wrong with having people throw that in the chat to start a discussion, but you know, to break the ice. But when there is nothing else other than where you're from, and I haven't been live for a while, you don't have to go. There's no,
there's no pressure. There shouldn't be
pressure, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that, because of the gamification, people have the fear that if they don't see the stats increasing or growing, that their audience is disappearing. Now, I'm not saying there aren't elements or risks with less frequently publishing and getting out of touch. It depends. But I mean, I remember the YouTube Creator Insider channel had a talk with the experts in the algorithm, and they said, you know, like, taking a little break here and there's no evidence to prove that it harms your channel.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's all about that we get carried away in those numbers as, you know, an ego gratification thing to validate that we think we're doing something right. But that may not necessarily be the case, right? Like you said, someone can come knocking at your door because they just love your portfolio, and that could be an archive of stuff, right? And as long as the quality's there and they resonate with you. And
not everything has to be part of that. Like if you do a YouTube video and you look back on it in a month and you go, okay, that was kind of not really representative of what I do. It doesn't have to stay up there. I recently took down or made private a bunch of videos just because I felt that they were all kind of time related, and I didn't think anybody really is at this point wants to watch a live stream update about what shows are coming on December 12th of 2016. Sure. Now, there's a couple of updates that I did in the past where I may have discussed a product or a service that's still relevant today. And so the fact that I then did time-related news, the shows that day, okay, I'll still keep it up there because there's something relevant in it that people would want to see. But I would hate for people to get caught up in like, okay, I'm watching Does all he put up here is old content about So I've probably dropped off about 100 videos from my channel that just they don't serve any purpose anymore. Like, I'd much rather people watch the stuff that I'm creating now, or watch the interviews, which, even if they're related to something that was an issue then, there's still something evergreen about an interview in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
it's about the way the two people are interacting and relate to each other in the conversation. But specifically on this date and time, this is taking place, and then this is taking place, and then this is taking place. I'm not sure that's interesting 2 hours later.
Yeah,
2 years later.
What? I looked at things like, take VidSummit, for example. Each year, people are curious and looking to explore about VidSummit, and they'll go on YouTube and say, oh, look, VidSummit, they key it in, and there may be highlights and interviews from the previous year. It's all still relevant. It just may be, more tentpole based, but still relevant. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to see the different kinds of content and what would be considered to be, like, not relevant anymore, or and I guess the composition of the balance of the content on your channel. Like you said, if you set private or unlisted near 100 videos, so obviously there was a fair amount of content you wanted to segregate that way to not be amidst the other content.
Yeah, and again, it's not that there was anything wrong with it. It just, there's just no reason that it really matters to anybody at this point. So why not put the highlight on things that are interesting and timely?
Yeah. So Ross, just before we go, if you've given a lot.
By the way, if some of them had a ton of views, then they stayed up even if they were.
Well, you can leave them as unlisted, and you still have the views and all that stuff. That's there true. Too. And it's not like it's readily searchable, but it's there. Often people will create content that they want to be able to share out for some reason or another, but they don't want the public to access, so they can share it as unlisted. Or, people do stuff for courses and different things and share it as unlisted content. Right. So, so for people starting out, take me for example. I was just like paranoid of the idea of going live solo. That's why I'm here doing interviews, and I want to eventually be able to go solo. But I said, you know what, interviewing allows me to be in a situation where I think is more interesting, anyways, because with two people there's a multitude of dynamics at play and of interest for engagement. So I thought that was a great way to break the ice, and then to get my feet wet. So for people that have a fear of kind of getting started, like, what do you suggest? And one of the questions we had earlier was like, how long should I go live? Like, what am I going to do? And should I do an interview? Should I just do a short thing with me myself? And how do you what do you suggest, some parameters for people who are newbies and I want to start, but I'm like, hey, I'm kind of like nervous too because of the platform and it's intimidating. Yeah.
So first time you go live, I would say 5 minutes, make it 5 minutes, pick up your phone, go on your personal profile, not on your business page, and talk about something that you're passionate about, a hobby, an interest, something that you know really well and that you're really enthusiastic and comfortable talking about. And then I would say script your first line or two, your opening, and script your last line so that you start smoothly and you end smoothly, because those are things that even after years and years and years of doing this can sometimes be a little choppy, right?
Yeah.
And after you do a few, you won't need to do that anymore. But I would recommend that. And you get off to a smooth start. You know that you're going to end with a good landing, right? And if you're going to talk about something that you're knowledgeable and passionate about in between, once you get off to that good start, that's going to carry you 5 minutes, and then wrap up. Don't, leave people, start with the sort of leave people wanting more, wrap up and call it a good first time. And then do that, maybe go live for 10 minutes, maybe mix up the subject a little bit, maybe start to engage the chat over the next 3 or 4. But I would say do 5 to 10 like that on your personal profile based on, things that you're interested in, subjects that aren't your business. And then when you get comfortable and you just, okay, I can do this, then start thinking about what you want to do on your business page. But I certainly don't believe in the, just go live on your business page, pick up your phone, or, start hosting a show. And before you've done it once or twice, because you want to put your best foot forward, or certainly a good foot forward on your business page. So get a little experience out of the way, and then once you've got that, you'll start to feel comfortable doing it. I think interview shows. I did an interview show almost exclusively, nothing but interview shows for 2 years, and a part of it was, I didn't want to do a show by myself, and I thought, having a guest will always give me somebody to talk to and something to talk about, and I'll never have to worry about if I can fill the hour or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think that because this is on a social media platform and it's a social medium, what a better way than to get conversation going in the chat and elsewhere is to actually be having a conversation with another person on the video. So I think that is good as well. And, you hear a lot about storytelling, but very few people think of interviewing as a form of storytelling. And it actually is a great way to bring out stories and to learn about somebody or some topic. And so I really enjoyed doing the interview shows. I think they're great. In the beginning, you can script questions. But obviously, in my opinion, the most important skill in interviewing is listening, because often the next best question will come from something that was just said. And there's nothing worse than when somebody asks a question that had already been answered because they weren't listening, or they felt they had to stick to their list. But in the beginning, script the questions, and then, then eventually script the questions, but don't rely on them. And then you'll get to a point where you're more thinking in terms of themes. We're going to talk. That's how I do. We'll probably talk 20 minutes about your book, 20 minutes about your strategy with YouTube, and 20 minutes about what events you're going to. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. You know what I mean? And then it's just a guideline. You think because people's attention span's about 20 minutes, right? So now you've got another subject you can pivot to, and not everybody will be interested in the topics that you talk about. So if you're talking about one topic and people aren't interested in your book, but they're very interested in your YouTube strategy, you can say coming up in a little bit, we're going to talk to Gord about his YouTube strategy. But first, let's take a look at the book. And so now you have, and then when you're talking about the YouTube strategy, you say, well, earlier we discussed the book, and then people know who are joining later that you have a book, or that they should go back and watch that on the replay because they missed that and they really want to hear about your book. And so that's how you do it. But you keep in mind that the show could take a totally different direction. If you come on and say, wow, I just interviewed Bill Gates and it went really well. You know what? I'm not asking you about your YouTube strategy anymore, right? The next 20 minutes, we're talking about Bill Gates and that interview and how you got that interview and what he had to say and why you think he chose your show. In other words, I'm listening because if you drop some news here or something that's like, you just let it go. And even though I may think in terms of an hour being like 3 20-minute segments, I may notice that the first segment's running out of gas after 5 minutes. So now I've got 2 other ideas of things I can talk to, 2 other topics I can go to. And if that first segment's really good and it even takes some detours and tangents or goes somewhere, I'm willing to go with it for the entire hour. And
so that's
fair. To something else. But I want to have 3 concepts, but I never write a question down. I mean, I haven't done that. My very first live stream show, I wrote down about 6 questions because I was a little bit nervous. I hadn't hosted a show in over 10 years. But ever since then, I never write a question down. But in my head, I know who my guest is and why I'm having that person on. So what do I want to talk to Gord about? I want to talk to him about his book. I want to talk to him about his YouTube strategy and what events he's going to be speaking at or what have you. And then within that, I feel the room, I feel the topic,
Yeah.
and it's like a little bit of a dance of where you go based on what's working, what's not working, what seems interesting, what seems to be resonating with the chat. Are you getting questions on a certain area? All those things should inform what you do. But in the beginning, an interview is a chance to write out some questions and know that you have somebody else who's going to contribute to the show and going to be a part of it. And then, but don't think that that doing an interview show is just a crutch. It's a wonderful type of content to create. It's great storytelling. It's also great for connecting to people in your industry. A lot of people you have on your show may become friends, business colleagues. It's a chance to call up somebody who's done something noteworthy that, you now you have something to offer them. Hey, come on my show. I'll talk about your book and promote it to our audience and all that kind of stuff. It's a great skill to have, to be able to interview and to be able to keep a conversation going under all sorts of different circumstances, because some of your guests will be good and some of your guests will not always have a lot to say, and you'll have to find a way to make something out of it. And
so that's very interesting.
It's all good experience.
What I want to say is you said so many incredible things here, and it's something that's become very present for me because I'm currently in a course called Voice for Success. And what I've learned through sort of like the psychological analysis of voice, I'm always calculating, and I'm in the head. And because I'm very analytical and a perfectionist by nature, I love to have everything controlled. So my first approach in starting out to do interviews was, I still script up a whole bunch of questions. But the thing is, now I'm prepared to, like you said, just let it go where it goes. I do this preparation more because what happens if, like you just said, the guest isn't that, engaging or sharing that much information? Boy, am I glad I had that list, because I don't want to deal with being present and panicked and having to still sort of like carry this interview through to something more meaningful and tangible for the people. And by your approach, though, it allows you to be so present with your guest that I can see that if you can manage that well, and the other variables you set in your head and carry it down whatever path it's going to go, you're already knowing that even though I only went this far, I'm bringing that value and interest to them. I still look at the show as, in the case of my channel, in terms of trying to create evergreen content, well, I'm bringing Ross on and I want to cover these 3 or 4 themes in what I'm doing. So I try to direct by bringing in the questions that I prepared for where I felt appropriate. So to me, I see that I'm learning to adapt and manage that. But I'm saying I would say, are at like a highly developed skill in terms of being able to just carry it like that way in a freewheeling fashion. And I'm just saying I commend you for that, because I would love to be able to get to that state.
Well, I think, being intentional about the questions when you're have a YouTube strategy that's part of it, and you're thinking, okay, I want to make a video, let's say, I learned this from Owen Video, and what he does is he takes a show, the Business of Video podcast, and he specifically writes out 5 questions that he wants each question to become a YouTube video. On an evergreen topic. So he's going to stick to those questions. Doesn't mean he's not going to add a follow-up or this or that, but he is focused on that end result. Sometimes I think I should do more of that, but I like the unscripted, free-flowing nature of it. And, I kind of feel like if you give me a person's name and one fact about them, I can do an interview for a half an hour with them just awesome. By listening to what they say and then asking questions. You have to be genuinely interested in people. Absolutely. You have to think basically either well of people or want to explore some issue deeper or whatever. You have to be interested. You have to listen. A good preparation for me for that was I was a studio host for football coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not know who my guest was going to be and might not know very much about him. So I would get in my ear. We have, John Doe. He plays offensive line for this team, and they won by 10 points or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first of all, I'm in a studio, so I'm not actually watching the game. All I've got is a few notes and stats and stuff like that. That's number one. Number two, the lineman doesn't touch the ball, so I can't talk to him about running for that 50-yard touchdown or anything like that. So, hey, you guys struggled scoring in the first half, but in the second half, looks like your offense clicked. What happened? And then I listen to how he answers that question, and I ask a follow-up. And I listen to what he says on that follow-up, and I ask another question off of that, and maybe I know something in general that's going on with that team. And then I ask, you guys have had a lot of injuries over the last few weeks. Were you guys healthy today, or you just found a way to overcome it? And next thing you know, you've gotten through 10 minutes, and it works. And so that was a tremendous way of preparing for interviewing almost anybody, because I simply, often didn't know the person or know much about them. Perhaps if it was the starting quarterback or something like that, obviously it's a little easier. There's stats. You probably have seen how they play and things like that. But in general, I'm in the studio. There's all these games going on, and, I can't watch them. It's not like I'm a network TV where I've got like 18 screens above me. And even so, they can't watch every play of every game. So you learn how to sort of talk your way through these things. And so that's been great for me when I get a guest who's not that forthcoming, or, something's not working. I can always sort of feed off of other things that they say or other things that I know.
Yeah. So I see that as well. You've had some great experience to sort of build the muscle, I'll call it, to be able to deal with all kinds of situations, so that you don't really feel at risk, because you have different concepts or approaches, and your curiosity, like you said, is so strong there that it helps you in all kinds of situations, because you have a general curiosity about people, and you can just let that drive you through. And that's what inspires me to do interviews as well, is that curiosity to learn about people, and us share, what we can with others to help them, benefit in some way, and have an interesting conversation at the same time. So
yeah, and I don't want it to sound like you don't prepare, because you prepare, but then you rely on that sort of knowledge base and technique and things like that. So you prepare by, I learn what I can about the different football teams that are playing that day, for example. And but I can't know everything about all of them, and I can't know everything about every player, but I know in general some things that are going on. I learn what I can. I do a fair amount of reading during the week.
Yeah.
But then I've got to rely on what I learned, as well as what I can conclude from the limited data points that I have to come up with questions. And sometimes it's sometimes you start out with a question as simple as like, oh, you guys lost 50-48. What happened out there?
Yeah.
And then you hear what they say, and then you can go deep, oh, we turned the ball over 3 times in the first half. We couldn't run the ball. Why do you think your running game wasn't working today? So-and-so got hurt. Oh, what happened? And how's he going to be? You think he'll be back next? In other words, every answer they give you something that you can dig deeper on, or go in a different direction with, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that works for almost any kind of interview, really.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, and that's something I'm trying to learn better in terms of the experience. But what I will find interesting is, like, we're having this conversation here, and it's going on long. I wouldn't, unless I had like an Owen Video precise segmented show with what I had to get through and deliver, with the 5 things I want to accomplish, a beginning and an exit, etc., in a planned fashion. how do you, I guess most things are time constrained, right? In one way, shape, or another.
Yeah, I mean, that, for instance, the kind of interviews I was talking, you usually have somebody 7 to 10 minutes maximum, right? Maybe
Yeah.
less. They got to get on the bus, they got to go. They're still on the field when somebody
Yeah.
grabs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't keep them that long. You have commercials to play, which is often helpful in knowing that you don't have to stick with something forever. But I think it's one of the beauties of live streaming, and particularly in the type of live streams that people seem to be doing on YouTube, where if things are going well and there's an audience there and the conversation is good, why hold yourself to an hour? It's not
Yeah.
not that the sponsors aren't going to be yelling at you because you didn't take a commercial break. You don't have another show that comes on this channel
Right. Exactly.
at 8 o'clock, so you have to be off at 8 if you go till 9 or 9:30 or whatever. So be it. I mean, if you're providing value and people are
Yeah.
enjoying it and sticking around and you're enjoying it and it works for your schedule, of course.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beauty of this. And I think that's why people like the platform like Blab so much, is that it would start out as a show, and then the formal interview would end, and then people would just hang out and the conversation would continue. And sometimes the conversation stayed in much like the show on the similar topics and with the host kind of leading. And then other times it would just become what it is. It would be four people sitting around chatting about whatever, wherever it went,
Yeah. Yeah. I often find that to be the case. Like after I have an interview, and then we talk after for a couple of minutes, sometimes it turns into an interesting conversation and we go, it would have been nice to have that recorded to share. You know what I mean? And it's like a whole after the fact experience. You mentioned interviewing as storytelling as well. Can you maybe explain a little more? Like, is it because your ability to be resourceful, or like what are you actually navigating from a standpoint of knowing that you're actually, this is storytelling? Is it because of what you're able to have the other person speak about, or is it something that's like planned in the way you would go about the interview?
I mean, it's not that intentionally planned, but if I wanted to, we could go through, I could interview you and go get your life story, or get a story about one aspect of your life. I could get the story of how you started on YouTube and how you grow and how you came to be an expert in Camtasia, and then what else you've added to, and how you added, and before you know it, we've got the story of Gord as a YouTuber, and Gord as a video creator and an online personality, and we've told that story based on the questions that have been asked, the answers you've given, and then where I go next with it to kind of lead it. And when I talk about interviewing as storytelling, if you have a business, right, and one of the most effective ways of using live streaming, I think, for your business is to interview clients and customers who've had a successful experience about their journey. That's storytelling. You ask them what the problem was. Obviously, you vet the ones that you're going to interview to make sure it's somebody who can tell who can, give good answers and is reliable and everything. But still, the fact that it's live gives so much more credibility than if they recorded a video testimonial and people think, well, they probably took it 6 times. He handed them a sheet of what to say about the company. But if you were, say, a customer or a client of mine, and I said, Gord, tell me about what you were experiencing in your business when you first came to me. And you said, well, I was struggling with this. And then what did we do? Well, you helped me a lot with this and that. And so what have been some of your results of lately? Oh, my sales are off the charts, whatever. All of a sudden, you've got, I've got this amazing testimonial for my business.
Right.
All I did
love
was
that.
ask you questions that you could answer in your sleep, simple questions, but I'm leading leading the conversation so that you tell the story of your experience with my business. There's almost no business except in the most, regulated industries, maybe insurance or financial services, banking, things like that. But in most businesses, particularly, small businesses and stuff, to be able to get customers and clients and use that as your testimonial rather than some written out comment that, probably went through 15 versions until they wrote 10 sentences and you picked one and put it on your website. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have quotes from people on my website too that are taken from a bigger something that was written, maybe that didn't even have to do with giving a testimonial. But the idea that you can do that and then put those on your website and embed them in blog posts and all that kind of stuff, put them in a LinkedIn article and all these kind of things. That's what I mean when I talk about live streaming interviews can be storytelling. It's not just getting the story of somebody who accomplished something in their career, whatever. It can be the story of your business or your client's business or somebody you're doing a video for who needs to tell that story. You can be the interviewer or have them interview one of their clients. There's so many different ways to do it, but it's an extremely effective way.
I love this concept because I'm used to passing out a quote like, here's the 5 things to cover to produce a testimonial. I'm so thankful you're going to do one. And then they sort of come back like a formula, right? But this way, by you leading the interview and because of the knowledge you have of that client's experience with you, you can easily make them, I'll call it, light up in a storytelling way that will be so much more effective than them sitting there, like you said, take one. They're trying to say these are the 3 problems I had when I called Ross. I was struggling with ABC. Then Ross did this, right?
Yeah. And then you can either put the actual live interview on your site, or you can just take their answers from the interview and make a video from that. And you'll find that the answers will be better, I think, when you're interviewing somebody and they're responding in a conversation rather than when they sit down, they look into the camera and they say, I worked with Gord and it was good and I'm not really sure what to say. Whereas you say, hey, how was your experience working with me? Oh, it was great. Thanks. I really like there's something about looking you in the eye versus looking at the camera staring back at them. So even if you don't use repurposing the live, but instead you take the clips out, you don't repurpose the live as its whole. But I think either way can be very effective.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And Paul in the comments added, he blogs about every video that he uploads as well. So absolutely. I guess there's so many ways to repurpose what you're doing. And I think that's really, really cool. So Ross, you have several shows, and one of them, which we didn't talk about, is called Brand on Broadcasting. Now, if I recall, you said that this covers a diversity of things. So can you give me a sense, and everyone here, a sense of what you're doing with that your intention with the kind of content you're going to share there? And is that podcast only? Is it going to be a combination of things? Like right now, it's primarily a podcast, right?
It depends. Some I'm doing as podcast interviews. Some I'm doing as solo podcasts. Some I'm doing as live streams that then are repurposed into a podcast. It's basically Livestream Deals is very focused on products and services for live streamers. It's got a specific format. It's generally 4 15-minute interviews on a monthly live show. And then each one of those segments becomes a podcast episode. So it's one monthly show becomes 4 podcast episodes. And each guest is representing a product or service, course or event, something that's geared towards podcasters, live streamers, content creators. So it's a very specific purpose. Brand on Broadcasting is anything else related to live streaming, podcasting, It could be traditional TV and radio, anything online broadcasting off, traditional broadcasting, anything like that, that I feel like talking about, that I have somebody I want to interview about that doesn't sort of fit into that live stream deals mode. I just wanted to do it that way. I had done live stream stars for a couple of years, which was all interviewing people about how they're using live streaming. And I booked the guests way in advance. This is the exact opposite. Instead of, booking the guest lineup way in advance and then talking about whatever it is that guest is knowledgeable in. This is, I'm talking about whatever is on my mind at that time. And then if there's a guest, I'm booking a guest to speak to that topic. So it's a little more sort of how you would do a live radio show, kind of. You may have some guests booked ahead of time, but oftentimes you're getting your guests based on what you're going to talk about and who would be a good person to talk about that. So I wanted to do one live at it was recorded live to tape. It wasn't really like a live audience, but I wanted to record one at DC Podfest using Wildfire Radio was the company that was doing the recording, producing. So I interviewed somebody who had spoken that day and who I had reconnected with after a while. And we talked about how podcasters and live streamers can use Twitter chats to promote what they're doing. He's also an HR professional. So we talked about how HR is using, different social media and broadcasting tools and podcasting and things like that. And then, I did one episode that was right after IGTV came out. So I did IGTV versus YouTube. I think it's pretty clear who's winning that matchup at this point, but I haven't decided that IGTV is, it hasn't made it yet, but it certainly still has potential. They've got to get Discovery going. I did an unboxing through that. I've done a bunch of different types of things. My interviews with Nick Nimmin, my interviews with Dan Norton, which haven't come out yet, but that's going to come out as an episode of Brand on Broadcasting. But like my interview with Sean Cannell, I put that on Live Stream Deals because he has a new book that's out. So that's perfect product to feature on that show. So that's kind of how I divided up the Vid Summit interviews, is based on, if somebody had a product that they, a book or something that just came out versus, or they were a vendor for a product and they had their own booth. I interviewed somebody with Simplecast, things like that.
Yeah. What I really like about that is that by using, Brand on Broadcasting, you get to satisfy, I'll call it, your creative inspirational moments. And that's a hard thing for me to do with doing, evergreen how-to tutorials. And what I end up having to do to satisfy my whims, what I used to do, is I would go create some kind of fancy creation, a video meme, 30-second or a minute-long video meme that would just let me creatively express because it was fun and the joy and being in the moment. And then I'd publish it on my Facebook profile page. And then I'd feel fine. Then I go back to the structured stuff, right? And I go like, Ross has a solution where he's able to leverage that content and he's just packaging it under like another channel or concept, where I could probably do that with those memes, but I'm not really making use out of it. But it's some of the most fun, creative stuff that I do. So I'm just, always trying to figure out how do I satisfy that on the whim of the moment or inspiration when it hits me, because I can just
be its own channel, right? You can even take your own channel for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that means experimenting with things, obviously, right? And I think because there's such a diversity of different kinds of platforms to deliver content on, we need to keep experimenting to find out what is resonating with the people out there and somehow engage them more. And what do you think about that whole aspect of, like, do you seek feedback to try and get a better understanding from the audience, or how do you discern that? Like, I mean, to help you in your decision making about where you're going to publish what kind of content.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you go live in particular, the feedback is instantaneous and you just know. I mean, as a guest, I'm not watching the chat as closely because I'm focusing on listening to your questions and
Hmm.
addressing your questions. And if I was hosting, even though I would be doing my all to listen, because that's where my next question is most likely to come from, is what you said to my previous question. I'm more comfortable because I'm using my tools. I know exactly where everything is. I'm watching the chat, so I'm seeing instantly with what I'm talking about is resonating or not. I tend also with like brand on broadcasting is I'm thinking more of the podcast with that show. So even when I go live, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to do an unboxing. I'm not sure whether that's going to make for good podcasting content or not. What can I do that could also be part of an episode if I decide to
Right.
do an episode? And maybe I go live for an hour and a half and I take 20 minutes of it and make a podcast out of 20 minutes where talk about one specific I talk about interviewing or something like that. And
Right.
but for brand on broadcasting, all the ones that I've done live, I've done spontaneously. I've
Hmm.
just like, okay, I want to talk about this, and I go live, and it is what it's meant to become. If that makes sense, which isn't something again, I had necessarily advised to people when they're starting out to just go live and see what
Yeah. Yeah.
happens. But the thing is, I have an idea about, I want to talk, like, I just came home from this event and I want to talk about the event.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, it's spontaneous, but it's not aimless.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the
Yeah.
difference there. It's not just, I wanted to go live because I haven't gone live in a while. No, I want to go live because I want to talk about this event,
Right.
but
Right.
I haven't really thought out exactly what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to get on and go with it because
But
that's what I do sometimes.
so it's really I'm sensing a mix for you because take for example Vid Summit. I know you were promoting in advance that you were going to be interviewing Nick Nimmin, Steve Dotto, with Sean Cannell. Like you actually had 4 people and you were scheduled a time and it was all planned, right? But then you did, from what I hear, all kinds of other stuff, that was added on. Like I loved that piece I saw that you did with the guy from Andrew. Is it Andrew from
Andrew Haley
Wirecast?
I
Like
interviewed
that.
Andrew Haley from Wirecast.
Yeah, I loved that interview piece. That so much, great information in there. That was really good.
I interviewed Dan Norton, who was, we mentioned earlier, was awesome on that 24/5 live stream with Daryl. I interviewed, let's see, Addy Saucedo, who's podcaster who was representing Simplecast there. Steve Dotto. Who else did we get? Jason Liebman, who was involved with the official live stream. And then Nicole Sanchez, who was actually a Best of Be Live pick when we were doing that show. And it was cool to see her and talk to her about like live streaming at the Enterprise. She was a live streamer for Cisco. And Carlos Gil was there. I talked to him about his talk on Facebook and social media. And I also talked to Brian G. Johnson. Unfortunately, my audio went out when I was doing that, and I didn't get anything from that interview. But yeah, so there was a whole bunch of people. I mean, once I get rolling, it's like, who else is around? Okay, come on in. You got something to say. Come on in. You got a product. Come on in.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. When, like you said, when the moment of inspiration hits you and you want to do it, and I love that because I think that allows for spontaneity, and some of the best stuff that we can do sometimes just comes out in that flow, right?
Right.
And that's why a lot of the interviews you do, you have such a skill at navigating that way that is very fascinating to watch. So I always like to see, like, when you have a new set of guests on live stream deals, and I know it's going to be, in that case, very focused, very tight, and learn about their stuff, and it's quite cool, and I really appreciate that kind of diversity of content that you're creating. And so Ross, what's next on the horizon? You've been at a lot of conferences in the last little while. Like, what can you share us some? Sorry about that. What's coming up for you?
Yeah, so I think 2019 for me is going to be about variety, and I think we have to go even further in how do we make people stop and watch that video, right? Because there's more and more, it's getting noisier and noisier, and people have seen it all already, and just being live or just creating a video is no longer a novelty. So that means for me, I'm thinking different broadcasting from different settings.
Mm.
Sometimes I'm here at the desk with the microphone and I'm doing kind of radio style, talking head style. Other times I might be out at an interesting location. I might have a different. I mean, I don't have the ability right now to set up a different set, but if I could, I would have a different set for each show, and
Yeah, yeah,
just things where somebody's scrolling by and they see you and they go, oh, he's doing something different.
yeah.
Let me see what this is. So maybe more using this guy and doing some IRL live streaming. Just I just want to continue doing a variety of content. Obviously, I love hosting live stream deals. It's really fast paced. It's a monthly show, and then making the podcast episodes. I'm planning to continue with that. I love the brand on broadcasting thing. I'm really enjoying doing that. But I'm thinking of mixing up content and doing more variety and maybe doing some more vlogging. We'll see how the vlog turns
Yeah, I
out.
can't wait to see that. That'll be
Part
fun.
one of multi-part vlog from DC Podfest, and that'll be out on my YouTube channel probably by tomorrow. And we'll see. I'd love some feedback. If you like it, let me know. If you think I need to make some changes, let me know. If you think I should give up vlogging before I make a fool of myself, let me know. I'm curious to see how that turns out. It's totally new for me. I've never done it before. This will be my first one, and maybe I'll like the format. It was certainly kind of fun putting it together. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of lower thirds you got to come up with.
Yep.
A lot of different things that go into it. And we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But that's something that may be something that I add. And of course, YouTube's a big interest of mine to continue creating content that's intentional for the channel, not just as an archive or as part of my digital portfolio, but
Right.
as actually being part of the YouTube community and creating content that people are searching for and that people will come back for, and that does bring in more views and more helps grow the channel.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so looking forward to see. There's a lot of new stuff coming for you, and it's cool to see that you're getting into the editing. And if you ever need any help, I'm here. I can
Thanks.
give you some tips on doing some creative things there. And it sounds like it's a real fun time for you as well in terms of exploring from the standpoint of growth in some of the skills. And that's one thing that's for sure. Like, this is just like never ending.
Never ending.
Yeah.
You can always learn more, and then when you do learn more and you think you've accomplished something new, then technology changes a little bit. But a lot of the stuff we talked about today, I think, are really fundamental things that don't change as technology changes or as platforms change. Knowing how to interview, knowing how to open and close a show, knowing how to engage with your live chat. All these things, are so fundamental. Making sure that your audio is okay, is at an acceptable level where people aren't going to be turned off because it's, they're having trouble listening. You do those things, I think you're setting yourself up for success, no matter how technology changes or platforms change or what type of live streaming you do. The other thing is, I've got the predictions episode will be or blog posts, my big annual blog post that I do, and I am going to be sending you an invite, Gord.
Oh,
I
thank
want
you.
to get your thoughts on live streaming or podcasting or YouTube or technology for live streaming or audio and video, something in that area for 2019. For
Sure.
the for the upcoming blog post. I'll look forward to that.
Me too. So thank you so much, Ross, for sharing all that you did tonight, and thanks for being able to like hold the floor and allow me to protect my voice too.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and Gord, it was great. You've had quite a run here doing live streaming with great interviews and great guests, and thanks to this awesome chat. People here have been tremendous. I love all the participation and all the feedback from the chat. So it was a wonderful experience. Thanks for having me, Gord.
Thank you, and good night, everybody, and we'll see you in another interview soon. And I greatly appreciate that you all were here and participated and enjoyed. And I apologize, I still can't key in comments, and I tried many times over, but I really appreciate that you all participated, and I'll have to figure out another tech challenge to solve for next time. And I see Todd's joined us as well. He joined a while ago, and thanks again, Todd, and for your support. And thank you, everybody that's here. Much appreciated. And we'll see you again soon. Take care.